The Summer Shred Challenge, 75 Hard, the Great Winter Lock-In. Hi, I'm Liz, and if you're anything like me, then you've noticed that social media is full of people showcasing their self-help projects, constantly reinventing themselves and pushing the advice of self-help gurus who flout new hacks, methods, and new rules to shame you for not changing. Self-help is directly tied to the ideology of neoliberalism, and today I'm going to argue that the genre of self-help is holding all of us back. It's holding us all back from actually changing our society for the better. It's perpetuating a system that is crushing the working class and padding the pockets of billionaires while feeding all of you a myth to keep us compliant. So first, we gotta define neoliberalism, because I hear that word a lot, and if you're anything like me, you kind of just roll your eyes at it because you hear it all the time in social media. But once you understand what neoliberalism is and how deeply entrenched it is in American society, you can't unsee the danger and harm of neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is the idea of the social survival of the fittest. Neoliberalism believes that failures like poor health and poverty are not the fault of the system, but rather you, the individual. Self-help then blossoms in a neoliberal hellscape because it is deeply built into the fantasy that you and you alone are responsible for your success and failure. Neoliberalism is the bedrock of American politics and culture, and not just for conservatives. 2/3 of Americans believe that most people can get ahead if they're willing to work hard. That is not just a Republican belief. Over half of Democrats also believe in the power of positive thinking, that you can will yourself to success. So when you see a liberal-leaning influencer post about reproductive rights or LGBTQ rights, or even about the harms of ICE and immigration raids, it's easy to believe that person is liberal and therefore I agree with them. They are a good influence on my life. That's someone I can agree with and trust. So when they also share the latest tip they got from a self-help guru, it's easier to think that self-help also aligns and serves you. But self-help is only making your life worse. The idea that you can achieve your dreams through hard work and positive thinking is a short-term relief. It powers people to set higher goals for themselves and create more focus in the short term. But when life gets hard, the power of your hard work and that alone leaves you burnt out. We often see stories on social media about people reinventing themselves, transformative before and after posts, and tales of personal breakthroughs. But what's left out of these narratives are the real structures shaping your life: economic inequality, weak social safety nets, and layers of inequity and discrimination. The myth of meritocracy, the idea that anyone can succeed if they only work hard enough, makes us believe that every setback is our own fault, not a failure of the system. Research actually shows that for lower income people in America, this belief in self-made success leads to worse health, higher rates of stress, and increased self-blame when things just don't work out. And self-help influencers feed into this narrative. Take Mel Robbins, for example, who tells her story of rock bottom when she and her husband faced $800,000 in debt. According to Mel, they were able to work hard, pinch pennies, and depend on themselves to dig themselves out of the hole of debt. But Robbins doesn't share the financial resource she had available to her at the time. The fact that she was able to spend thousands of dollars on voice lessons to improve her coaching business. That she was working for Fortune 500 companies as a business coach at the same time as tackling this debt. We also don't know, listening to her story, if this debt was high interest loans, a car payment, or a home loan. By using her story of paying off debt without sharing the details and the financial resources that she had, or even the type of debt this was, it is presenting a false narrative of pull yourself up by your own bootstraps to people who may not have the same privileges or the same resources to tackle the debt in their own lives. She had all the resources necessary to pay down her debt, a well-paying job, upward income mobility, and a 2-income household. When this myth of self-improvement is sold to people, it creates an illusion that deeply impacts people's morale and health. Instead of examining how factors like poverty, wages, or inaccessible healthcare limit opportunity, people are taught to internalize blame and redouble their efforts, cementing the neoliberal idea that you are responsible and you alone are responsible for your fate. People often wonder, with all the abundance and opportunity that America has, why does America report such low rates of happiness and satisfaction? My theory is because we all are taught that if we are failing, it's our own personal fault. And that That is extremely demoralizing. Countries that report higher happiness have stronger safety nets. You can fail and not lose your health care, and you can fail and not have to worry about paying back mountains of student loan debt. But the meritocracy myth has created a brutal cycle of positive thinking with the need to reinvent yourself alongside the demoralizing reality of failure.
Get your fucking ass up and work. It seems like nobody wants to work these days.
That's so true.
You have to surround yourself with people that want to work.
Americans like to believe that if you work hard enough, you can get ahead. But the reality is the people who work the hardest in this country are often the ones most trapped by poverty. Self-help gurus want to tell us that it's about balancing our natural talent with hard work. And if you combine both, that is a recipe to get ahead.
Anything is possible if you really put your mind to it, but you are not going to manifest your way out of anything. You have to take those thoughts and everything that you want, and you've got to couple it with something. And for me, that has been hard work. There is no secret. The secret is I had the vision and I put it together with some really, really hard work. And that's what you have to do.
Imagine telling that to a low-income worker who works multiple jobs at minimum wage and still earns below the federal poverty line. That is the reality for most low-income workers in the US. They work longer hours, often juggling multiple jobs and still earning below the poverty line. It is not about how much they are working, and it is not about their talent. It is about the corporations who are exploiting American workers and refusing to pay a living wage, while also exploiting our tax system to pay lower taxes on average than the average American. And if we look closer, these systems impact women even harder. Women work hard and are talented, and they still make 73 cents to every dollar earned by men. And that is from 2023. In 2025, with thousands of job cuts and inflation, the income gap between men and women has only widened. And that gap is even harsher for Black and Latino women. Despite all of this, Americans still want to cling to the idea that hard work equals success, and they clock in the hours to prove it. Americans work more hours per year than workers in most other high-income nations, particularly that of Western Europe. The average US worker clocks in around 1,800 hours annually, compared to the average worker in countries like Germany or France, who works between 1,300 and 1,600 hours per year. Americans also work harder shifts. 25% of American workers work the night shift, compared to only 6% of European workers. Yet for all of this hard work, Americans are not reaping the benefits. American workers don't get mandated time off like their European counterparts. Their health insurance is directly tied to their job, meaning any layoff can hit their bank accounts with skyrocketing medical costs. And Americans also have to cover more things out of pocket, like childcare and education, that families in other developed nations don't pay for. Hard work isn't setting the American worker ahead. Instead, it is lining the pockets of billionaires like Jeff Bezos, who then turn around and use AI to cut workers and increase their own margins. In sharing how hard American moms work and how little reward there is for it, a viewer commented this on a recent short of mine. I have a public health degree which I can't use because of underfunding and defunding. Even if I could get a job in my field, I would be left with less than $100 a week for my paycheck after paying for daycare for 2 kids, which would mean that my kids would lose their state health care, we would lose our food stamps and WIC, and we would lose the help we are getting from the state to pay our health insurance. So I stay home. My husband works 40 plus hours a week for over 3 times the federal minimum wage, and yet we are still low income. We aren't the problem. It's the economic system and government that is the problem. The minimum wage is not a living wage. Working harder actually can punish you in this country. By working harder, you lose access to benefits that are intended to help you keep you out of poverty. Working harder has been sold to you as the answer. Those who work hard earn merit, and yet the middle class is still shrinking. In fact, as America has bought into meritocracy, it's only entrenched more income in educational inequality. According to The Guardian, in the US, the top fifth of households enjoyed a $4 trillion increase in pre-tax income between 1979 and 2013. That's $1 trillion more than the rest of us. When increased access to higher education was introduced in the US and Britain, it was seen as a great equalizer. But a couple of generations later, researchers tell us that higher ed is now a great stratifier. Economists have found that many elite U.S. universities, including Brown, Dartmouth, Penn, Princeton, and Yale, take more students from the top 1% of the income distribution than from the bottom 60%. To achieve a position in the top tier of wealth, power, and privilege, it helps enormously to start there. Quote, American meritocracy, the Yale law professor Daniel Markovits argues, has, quote, become precisely what it was intended to combat, a mechanism for the dynastic transmission of wealth and privilege across generations. And yet, despite the vast amounts of income inequality in this country, more Americans report that they think benefits, the social safety net, should be cut altogether. Again and again on surveys, Americans report that they believe good choices are the key to success, and that those who fail to make good choices don't deserve social support or empathy. Jessica Calarco explores this paradox in her book, Holding It Together: How Women Became America's Social Net. In her book, she interviews a mom who quit her job earning $30K a year to stay at home with her kids. Her husband is also lower income, and with his income, her family now has to make ends meet on only $30,000 a year. That income level sits right around the federal poverty level. Because of their income, they qualify for state insurance and federally subsidized home mortgages. Yet again and again in surveys, April insisted that, quote, people who are poor have not worked as hard as other people, end quote, and that, quote, poor people today have it easier because they can get government benefits without doing anything in return, end quote. April holds this attitude towards government assistance despite also benefiting from it. And it's not just April. Most Americans surveyed, even those getting government benefits, look down on receiving assistance as a moral character flaw. Repeatedly, Americans report that you can, quote, just get off benefits if you work hard enough, end quote. Because of these attitudes, Americans then vote in vast numbers for politicians who push to shrink the social safety nets. They use the fraying ladder of social assistance that barely helps people get out of poverty, and then vote to cut that same benefit that they used to others. As politicians vote to slash benefits and demonize anyone receiving government assistance, they also vote to slash taxes on billionaires, keep wages low, and use our tax dollars to enrich themselves instead of spending money on making life better for all Americans. And it's not just politicians. Other industries are jumping on the chance to sell you self-help to fix your life.
Transformed health outcomes for my patients and for me. I started a company to give patients actionable insights into their metabolic health data.
The fitness and healthcare industry is making billions selling you solutions to take control of your health. Influencers promote supplements, diets, fitness routines, and push you to change your life to focus on your health. Meanwhile, our government is cutting back funding into actual research that will eliminate disease. Regulations to keep our food healthier and less polluted are being stripped down. Wellness influencers are getting spots on the White House Health Advisory Board, all while trying to sell you products to, quote, change your life, end quote. Your health is a community project. The air you breathe, the food you eat, the streets you walk on, they are a group project. And yet neoliberalism and our current political leaders want you to believe your health is just on you to fix. It is the system that is flawed, and no amount of individual action will fix the system. The billion-dollar companies making bank by selling you food that lacks nutritional value, they need to be held responsible. But it is more profitable for wellness influencers to fearmonger about vaccines and doctors and medical conspiracies than actually invest in making American healthcare more accessible, affordable, and work for everyone. On social media, you can't go a day without seeing a video encouraging you to reinvent yourself. The endless cycle of glow-up posts, brand new morning routines, and before and after photo transformations are framed as empowering acts of personal liberation and transformation. But beneath that motivational mantra is a deeply neoliberal fantasy that success is centered on your own actions achieved solely through individual effort and personal branding. Neoliberalism teaches us that each of us is a self-made project, and that starts in grade school. I remember as a little kid going to science fairs, and in order to save the planet, we were taught how to recycle and the individual actions that we could take in order to save the planet. That is neoliberalism. The planet isn't going to be saved by my choice to recycle a plastic bag. What might save the planet is requiring the oil and gas industry to shift to renewable energy. But instead of focusing our efforts, our frustration, our political woes on the system, the leaders in charge encourage us to look inward and focus on our own individual choices. When politics becomes about your personal choices and the personal actions that you take, it is easier to make it about you and your personal comfort levels, which allows people to be both selfish with their vote and also to cut off the community that matters around them. There is constant discourse on social media about cutting off people who vote different than you, who hurt you by your vote. But it's not just you they're hurting, it's an entire community. And the only way to benefit the entire community is to leverage the relationships in your life to move forward with political change. By saying, oh, just let them and cut them off because you are personally harmed by the way they vote, you are disengaging from creating action and relationships that can lead to political change. And that comes across on social media. Social media amplifies this message by rewarding those who present themselves as endlessly adaptable and marketable. People who are always optimizing, always hustling, always leveling up. The narrative suggests that with enough discipline, hustle, and positivity, anyone can rise beyond their circumstances to remake their life to fit their dream. Economic inequality, the lack of social safety nets, and the inequity that shape outcomes for all of us are hidden from this narrative. When we fail to reinvent ourselves in the ways social media prescribes, the blame then falls on you as an individual, not on the structures that limit your opportunities. By presenting self-reinvention as a personal obligation and a pathway to success, social media props up the neoliberal propaganda that we were birthed into. It keeps us focused on self-improvement rather than collective action. It's a tool that keeps you and I compliant, distracting us from organizing for real change and demanding better of our leaders and institutions. The myth that merit and hard work are all that it takes to achieve the American dream is just that, a myth. I hope you enjoyed this video. I really got worked up writing it, just thinking about the amount of self-help gurus that I see on my social media who are constantly preaching at us to change when the system is stacked against all of us, when social safety nets are being diminished and cut back in this nation, when income inequality, educational opportunities are shrinking. Instead of fussing at you to follow the 5-second rule and get out of bed and never snooze your alarm, maybe we should spend more of our energy fussing at the politicians who are creating a system that is stripping back opportunity from all of us every single day. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed, I would appreciate it if you subscribed. And don't forget that I also have a channel membership. If you would like to see my videos early and get access to exclusive videos, go ahead and join the membership. Thanks to everyone for watching. Until next time, see ya.
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service.